James Keller said her name like it was something you could set gently on a table and admire. Bella, he smiled, holding out a hand in the middle of Caruso's lunch rush. I'm James. I just opened the olive branch across the street. She shouldn't have smiled back. She did anyway. Not the polite curve she gave vendors and delivery men. A real one, small, surprised, dangerous. The kind of smile that warmed cheeks and cracked long-set defenses. From the office corridor, Dante Caruso watched that smile bloom and felt something hot and unfamiliar tear through his ribcage like a flare. The back of his neck prickled. The room narrowed until there was just the new guy's hand on Bella's, and the soft way she said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." He moved before he decided to. Long, quiet strides through linen and silver and the low Sinatra drifting from hidden speakers. When James turned, Dante was already there. Black suit, darker gaze, the cold gravity of a man people crossed streets to avoid. "Can I help you?" Dante asked, voice even as piano wire. James's grin faltered, then rallied. "Mr. Caruso, pleasure, just introducing myself." Dante looked at the outstretched hand like it was a knife he'd recognize anywhere. He shook once. "Noted." Silence spread over the tablecloths like a shadow. "Especially you, Bella," James added, pivoting back to her as if he didn't feel the temperature drop. "Hope to see you around." He left to the bright ring of the door chime. The smile lingered on Bella's mouth for a beat too long, a glow that was not for Dante. "Who is he to you?" Dante asked, not moving. Bella blinked. "No one, a neighbor." "Neighbor's knock." He walked in. He said hello. Dante's jaw flexed, a storm cloud trying to keep its shape. "Get the Henderson file to my desk." "Yes, Mr. Caruso." He returned to his office, shut the door gently, and stood very still in a room that suddenly felt one size too small. For 6 years, she'd been the hum beneath his. Operation, the clean ledger line he never admitted he leaned on. Quiet, precise, predictable, a fact like gravity. Now a man with soft hands had said her name and gravity tilted. In the restaurant mirror, he caught a glimpse of himself, polished, controlled, untouchable. A king who believed distance was a kind of mercy. Mercy turned out to have teeth. Bella delivered the file and a bulletproof summary, eyes trained a respectful inch below his. Dante didn't look up. He never needed to. She didn't realize how much that had once hurt until she noticed it didn't anymore. "Anything else?" she asked. "Vendor discrepancies. Tommy gets the report." "Of course." She left. He stared at the closed door, 3 panels of wood he could tear off the hinges without breathing hard, and thought of James saying her name like it belonged in daylight. That afternoon he was a bad mood in a suit. A waiter cried. 2 lieutenants bled metaphorically. Tommy, who had survived 5. Cruz, 4 indictments and 3 wives, asked Bella, "What did you do to him?" "Nothing," she said, which wasn't completely true. She smiled at someone else. When the dinner rush finally shivered and settled, Bella drifted to the window the way she always did when the numbers blurred. Small reprieve, small square of glass. The olive branch glowed new and hopeful across the street. James put a chalkboard sign outside, laughed with his staff, looked like the kind of man who asked questions and actually waited for the answers. "You're staring," Dante said, appearing at her shoulder like a consequence. Observing, she corrected, not looking away. It's what accountants do. Be careful. Of what? Men who look that soft, he said, eyes on the other window, voice a shade lower. They always want something. And men who look like you. He turned then, finally, fully. The world narrowed to pupils and pulse. Everything. The words slid between them and hooked behind her. Sternum. For 6 years she'd been the silence that kept him out of prison, the ghost that stalked his coffers, the shadow with the steady hand. Not anymore. Not if he could help it. Not if that chirpy little chalkboard across the street kept drawing her eyes like a magnet. That night neither of them slept. Dante prowled his glass apartment, the city a black ocean beneath him, and rewrote 6 years of habit in one stubborn thought. I see you. I see you. I see you. Bella stared at her ceiling, the white a blank ledger, and admitted a softer truth to a quiet room. I want to be seen. Friday morning, she wore a green dress. Not black, not invisible. It slid over her like a decision. She didn't check in. She didn't pour his coffee. She didn't line the Henderson file perfectly with the edge of his desk. At 10, she walked in sunlight, not shadows, to a coffee shop on Court Street and sat across from James and felt what normal felt like, easy laughter, gentle question. Marks, a date that didn't require a burner phone, or a bodyguard to keep you from catching stray violence. Her phone buzzed. Dante, where are you? She stared at the screen until the words went double, then muted it and let that be its own kind of reply. At 1, when she finally walked into Caruso's, the air changed like barometric pressure. Staff ducked. Tommy dragged a finger under his collar. Dante stood behind his desk, as if gravity had finally found him again. Where were you? I had coffee with a friend. The neighbor. His name is James. Something dark and jagged moved behind Dante's eyes. The same thing that had moved years ago the night. A young man with a kind laugh stepped in front of a bullet. You don't know him, Dante said. I'm getting to. He wants something. What if what he wants is just me? That, Dante said, stepping around the desk until he was close enough for her to count the threads in his tie, is everything. He didn't reach for her. He didn't cage her in. He just stood there, all that leashed power held one hair from the edge, and said the only honest thing he had. Be careful. I'm always careful, she said, but the way her pulse leapt betrayed her. He let her go, and the letting cost him. He watched her type in her office later, watched the green edge of her dress flash each time she shifted in the chair, watched the little window in her door where light pooled on her hair. The sight hurt. He took the hurt like a man takes a punch he deserves. He texted once more at dusk, a line he would not have crossed yesterday. Come riding with me tomorrow. Meetings, I'll need you. The dots pulsed, vanished, returned. Fine. He slept for 3 hours. It was enough to look like he hadn't waited up. The Merceds purred through Brooklyn, tinted windows making a world of their own. Tommy drove. Dante and Bella shared the back seat, inches and an ocean apart. Castellano wants a 15% bump, Dante said, forcing his voice into business. Tell me why he's wrong. Because leverage is a number with teeth, Bella replied, professional reflex kicking in. We're his biggest client. 8% is fair. Anything higher, we pull 10 roots for 90 days and make him feel the winter. The corner of Dante's mouth did something unintended. You've been around me too long. Long enough to know you don't like being asked twice. Silence settled, thick but not hostile. The city lifted them, carried them over the bridge like a promise and a threat. You're having dinner with him, Dante said, eyes on the skyline. Wednesday. Where? You don't get that, she said softly. You don't get to know in order to not show up. Is that what you think I'd do? It's what you've done to people for years. His hand tightened on his knee, a tell redeemable only here, only with her. I won't. I meant what I said, be careful. Of you. He looked out the window again. Especially of me. They cleared too. Contracts like professionals who didn't bleed. On the sidewalk between buildings, Dante's phone lit up with an unheard name. He silenced it and said, "One more stop. Personal." A third-floor walk-up on a quiet block, the kind of building that smelled like old banisters and Sunday sauce. An elderly woman answered in a flour-dusted apron. Dante, she kissed both his cheeks. You're late. Business, he stepped aside. Mrs. Castellano, this is Bella. The famous Bella, the woman breathed, eyes warm. Come in, child. Dante traded envelopes, thick and thin. The thin one came from her, the thick one from him. Information for security, gratitude for grief. It could look like business. It felt like penance. How many? Bella asked once they were back on the street. 17 families, he said without looking at her. Widows, kids, people who paid for my life with theirs. I don't put it on a ledger. And you never told me. I never told anyone. Why me? He did look then. Flinched at what he couldn't protect from, the way she saw through him as if he were glass. Because you asked me to earn it. She didn't say thank you. She didn't soften. She kept pace with him to the car, and he felt something unknot inside that had been choking him for years. On the ride back, she scrolled through projections and contracts with a steady thumb. His knee brushed hers when the driver took a turn too sharp. Neither of them moved away. At the curb behind Caruso's, he walked her to her car, something old-fashioned and human slipping through the armor. Wednesday, he said, knowing he had no right. I hope he's what you need. I don't know what I need, she admitted, and the honesty knocked the breath out of him. He reached for nothing, touched nothing, and still she felt the drag of his gravity. He let her open her door. He let her drive away. He let the taillights disappear and told himself that restraint was a kind of love. The lie did. Hold. Wednesday came dressed like judgment. Bella changed outfits 3 times, settled on navy like a compromise with herself. James was already at the table when she arrived, stood, smiled, did all the right things. He was good. He was kind. He was not the problem. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a phone lit up. Dante typed and erased 3 different versions of Have a Good Time before sending the only one that didn't make him feel like he was handing her off at an altar. Have a good night. Thanks, she wrote back, and his chest hurt like the first time you run after a long time without moving. Over pasta and wine, James asked the question a normal man asks when he can read a room. Do you love him? Bella didn't lie. I don't know. James nodded. Then maybe dinner is dessert and not the meal. They parted friends. He kissed her cheek and said, "If he doesn't fight for you, I will be offended on your behalf." She laughed, a little broken, and drove to Caruso's without deciding to. Dante was alone under the office lamp, glasses on, sleeves rolled, dangerous made domestic. She knocked. He looked up, tried to be careful with his face, and failed. "How was dinner?" he asked evenly. "Good," she said then. He ended it. He went very still. "Why?" "Because he's not a fool." Silence. They could hear the walk-in hum 2 rooms away. Bella walked to the filing cabinet that had belonged to Dante's father, pulled out the good whiskey, poured 2 slow fingers, handed him one. "Tell me about the thing that broke you," she said. "Not the myth, the woman." He swallowed whiskey and pride. "She worked for the feds," he said finally. 2 years in my bed, one morning at my door with a badge behind her shoulder. I beat the case. I didn't beat what it did to me." "And to me," Bella said, even, not unkind. "Because then I became a function, not a person." He flinched and nodded all at once. "I made you a wall. I told myself I was keeping you safe. I was also keeping you out." "And now?" she asked, and the question was a blade offered hilt first. "Now I'm asking you to make me work for the thing I should have chosen every day without being asked." She set her glass down. "No more controlling my time," she said. "No more dragging me into cars to keep me where you can see me. If we try as equals. You fail once, I'm gone." "I won't," he said. "You might." He nodded like a man taking vows he didn't feel entitled to speak. "Then I'll fix it," he said. "Not with force, with proof." "Earn it," she said softly. The next morning there was a coffee on her desk, black, no sugar, and a small container of cream beside it. A note in his blunt scrawl, "In case you want to remember who you were before you had to be the strongest person in every room." She added sugar. It tasted like before. He stopped crowding her. He left space and stitched it with small threads. "Eat lunch," a forwarded article about forensic flags, a post-it that said you were right on page 14 because of course you were. The messages were light enough to float. They carried weight anyway. "On Friday," he asked. 1 hour, no angle." He took her to the promenade, to his bench, to the view that turned Kings small. He said, "This is where I remembered I was also a son." He told her about the nursing home, the daisies, the mother who sometimes thought he was a stranger. He told her he talked about Bella to a woman who forgot him in 10 minutes and remembered the important things anyway. "Come Sunday," he said, a question disguised as a statement. "Meet her." "Yes," she answered, and it felt like stepping onto ice you trusted to hold. Maria Caruso was little and bright and loved birds. She took Bella's hand and patted it. "Pretty," she pronounced. "Kind eyes, my boy needs that." Dante looked wrecked in a way he'd never allow anywhere else. In the parking lot, he stood with his head against the car door and let Bella hold him up for a minute. He didn't bother to count. 3 weeks. Enough time to build a rhythm, to teach a body what to expect. Morning coffee, evening check-ins that were really just excuses to hear the other person breathe. Space used wisely instead of as punishment. They didn't touch much. When they did, it was PG-13 and seismic. A hand at her lower back when a truck took the corner too tight. Her fingers in his when his jaw locked at a name from the old days. It was almost enough to make you believe the worst versions of both of them could be outvoted by the better ones. Then the phone call came like a siren through clean glass. Is this Isabella Morty? A woman. Cool, efficient, federal. Special Agent Caroline Chen with the FBI, we'd like you to come in for some questions. Bella's world tilted 5 degrees right and kept going. The words evidence and irregularities and your cooperation matters landed hard. She asked for a lawyer because she was not an idiot. She hung up and stared at numbers that had never lied and realized numbers could be used to frame as easily as to prove. She went hunting through years of laundering and legitimate cash flow, through shell companies and clean fronts, through the thin line they walked every day. She found the blood trail fast, the Castellano account, skimming, invoices tied to her approvals, a snake coiled in a ledger waiting. She didn't tell Dante. Fear wasn't new to her. Misplacing it was. Would he see conspiracy where there was clumsiness? Would he see treachery where there was a woman who had spent 6 years keeping him safe and did not want to be the second Sophia in his bones? She stopped answering his lunchtime "have you eaten?" She skipped the morning cream. She changed the locks on her face and hoped he wouldn't notice. Of course he did. Thursday night, he said, close the door. She did. He didn't sit. The distance between them was 2 feet and an ocean she'd poured herself. What is it? He asked, painfully calm. Did I push too hard, say too much, because if I did. You didn't, she said, and hated the way her voice bent. What happened? I need space. Bella. The name was a prayer and a warning. We're not going to turn into strangers so quickly that I don't get to ask why. I can't. Is he back? He asked, and it was almost funny except for how it was. Is this about the neighbor? This isn't about James, she said, and watched the truth land. He didn't look relieved. He looked scared. Is someone threatening you? She shook her head because the threat wasn't a man in an alley with a knife. It was government process servers and men in Navy suits who took their time. Her phone buzzed again with a number she did not save. She silenced it, the tiniest flinch. He saw it, of course. Who keeps calling? He asked, softer now. No one. Don't lie to me, he said, and it wasn't a command, it was a plea. Some things, she said, you can't fix. You don't get to decide that for me, he said, anger washing up not as volume but as hurt. Not anymore. Not after you demanded equal ground and I gave it to you. And if I tell you and you burn down a federal field office because you think you're protecting me, she shot back, the fight finally surfacing. Am I equal or am I a pretext for your worst instincts? The room shook with silence. Slowly, he exhaled. Take your time, he said, voice a scrape. But whatever else you do, don't put me back in the dark. I can survive anything except not seeing you again. She left. She didn't cry until she reached her car. She cried in anger at herself for breaking the one good thing she'd managed to help build, and then drove home and didn't sleep again. Friday morning, she said yes to the bureau. She retained a lawyer with a smile like a guillotine. She printed files and highlighted lines and built a wall the way she'd built budgets, precise, cold, necessary. She told herself she wasn't protecting Dante by keeping him out. She was protecting them both. The lie hung like fog. The first interview was polite. They always are when they think you'll be useful. Agent Chen's eyes were kind enough to be a tactic. "We know you're smart," she said. "Smart people see when the house they've helped prop up is on fire. You can walk out the front door if you do it early." Bella kept her voice even. "I don't recall," she said when she needed to. "That wasn't my purview," she said when it was. When she spoke, she was careful not to give them what they wanted, an angle to cut Dante open. She left the federal building and threw up in a neat trash can on the curb, then threw the napkin away and stood in the sun until the shaking stopped. Dante didn't call that day. He didn't text. He did what she'd asked. He stayed out of the parts of her life that weren't his to enter. It felt like punishment even though he was finally doing exactly what she said she'd wanted. Saturday night, the universe proved it had a sense of humor. The Olive Branch held some smug little soft opening party for investors. The sidewalk across the street crowded with dresses and good intentions. Bella, leaving late, collared tight against the cold, looked up just as James stepped out with a plate of something artisanal and waved at her like they were still a maybe. Dante saw the wave from the office window, and something old and ugly rose in him like a tide. He had given space, and it felt like drowning. He had kept distance and watched the neighbor step into the gap a second time. He went downstairs because kings sometimes walk among the people to remind themselves that the crown still fits. He crossed the street without a coat. He took a canapé he didn't want from a tray held by a girl who couldn't stop staring at his face. He walked up to James because a man who means to protect his life does not stalk around it like a ghost. "Congratulations," he said, dead calm. "Mr. Caruso," James replied, tension sparking. "You said you did." "Wanna step on toes," Dante said. "Yet you keep stepping." "Your employee is a person," James said evenly. "She gets to step wherever she wants." "You're right," Dante said. "She's a person. That's why I'm over here not touching you." James held his ground, which impressed Dante against his will. "You can't scare me off with posture," James said quietly. "You don't get to define her world by how big you can make yourself." Dante considered the plate in his hand. He set it on someone else's. "I define my world by what I protect," he said, "and I protect what's mine." "She's not yours," James said, but he said it softly, like he wasn't sure, like maybe part of him had seen what Dante knew too well. Some things are written in a room before you arrive. Dante didn't answer. He turned and crossed the street again, the cold sharpening him back into something he recognized. He made it 10 paces inside Caruso's before Tommy appeared at his elbow. "Boss," Tommy said, voice pitched to. "Careful. We got a separate problem. Federal cars were parked 2 blocks over all afternoon, unmarked, but not subtle." Dante looked at the office door to Bella's room and felt everything inside him drop a floor. He waited until morning because rage at night writes bad plans. The sun made restraint easier. So did the coffee on her desk that she didn't drink. "Tommy," he said, and a shadow peeled itself off a wall. "On me, no one else." They drove in silence to a nondescript building with a clean lobby and security guards who pretended not to see anyone. Dante sat on a vinyl bench outside a conference room and stared at a vending machine until the door opened, and his past, present, and future stepped out carrying a leather folio and a brave face. She stopped dead. Her lawyer did not. Mr. Caruso, the woman said, poker calm. You shouldn't be here. My client shouldn't be seen with you. She's not my client, he said without looking away from Bella. She's my bookkeeper. Bella flinched. He deserved the way it looked. Give us a minute, Bella told the lawyer. The woman considered the risk, the clock, the building, the cameras, and gave them 60 seconds. What are you doing? Dante asked, voice too low to carry. Fixing what I can, she said. By yourself. With counsel. Against my enemies. Against mine, she said, and the emphasis cut him. If the Bureau wants you, they'll build a case with or without me. I'm ensuring I'm not the cheapest lever they can pull. You thought I'd see you as Sophia, he said, and her eyes went wet with something older than fear. I thought you de-burned the city, she said, and I can't live with that on me. He stepped half a pace closer, careful like a man approaching a skittish horse. I won't touch a Fed, he said, and the promise tasted like ash. You have my word. I don't want your word, she whispered. I want the man who sat on that bench and told me the truth to show up when I'm scared. He did. Something he never had in public, he reached. He didn't drag her. He didn't claim her. He took her hand, quick and human and impossible to mistake. I'm right here, he said. Agent Chen walked by, a file in her arm and a very subtle smile that said leverage tastes best when it walks itself to your door. Mr. Caruso, she said politely, which in that hallway felt like a slap. We'll be in touch. Not with her, he said. With whoever we need, Chen said, and stepped into an elevator that made a clean sound when it closed. 60 seconds ended. The lawyer returned. Bella followed her down the hall and didn't look back. Dante stood beside a plant no one watered and let a lifetime's worth of bad ideas die on the linoleum. He didn't order anyone followed. He didn't call in a favor that would have put 3 agents on the back foot by dinner. He went back to the restaurant and did something no one had ever seen him do at noon on a weekday. He locked his office door and folded it on. Himself at his desk, and didn't move for an hour. When he came out, the mask was back on, but it didn't fit right. He found Bella at her window, the little square where she'd once watched his world like a movie from another seat. He leaned on the doorframe and didn't speak until she did. Castellano set me up, she said, eyes on the glass. Skimmed through an account tied to my approvals. They think I'm the path of least resistance. They're wrong, he said. I told them so, she said, and the faintest ghost of a smile touched the corner of her mouth. Politely. Let me handle Castellano, he said, and the old edge sharpened. Not the feds, him. You don't get to put blood on my conscience, she said, but she didn't say don't. She said, I need a confession on paper, not a body. I need a paper trail, something that makes their math fall apart. He was already moving, already making the mental chessboard he'd been building since he was 12, and his father taught him that men who steal from you should live just long enough to tell everyone else why it was a bad idea. You'll have it. You'll have it, she corrected. We're equals or we're not. His mouth curved, not in humor, in pride. We are, he said. I'm just a louder equal. She came to his desk that night with a plan written in neat lines and ruthless logic. Dante Reed nodded, edited once with a single strike of his pen that made a door where she hadn't seen one. This, he said. They ran the play like a duet. Tommy accidentally left a courier envelope at the distributor's back door. Inside, a vendor audit letter, innocuous to most eyes, lethal to men who knew where to look. Castellano panicked. He called the only person he thought he'd already compromised. Bella let him talk. She recorded nothing. She kept everything he offered in the coil of her memory. The next day, she sent a bland email to Agent Chen. Following up per your request, clarified invoices attached. CC'd, Dante's lawyer, a man. With a tie like a deadline. Attached, nothing illegal, just a set of corrected numbers that implied a different set of questions. That night, Dante went to see Mrs. Castellano with daisies and a paper bag full of groceries, and the kind of cold sadness you feel when you know the choices available all come with a cost. Leo's nephew, she said, reading his face the way women who have lived through men learn to. He did a bad thing. He did a stupid thing, Dante corrected. There's a difference. Stupid I can fix. He did not fix it with a river. He fixed it with the thing he was actually best at. Fear calibrated to just below fatal. The nephew signed a statement in a quiet room with a lawyer and a notary and Tommy's silence doing most of the work. The statement landed on Agent Chen's desk 2 mornings later under the heading, Voluntary Correction and Cooperation. By afternoon, Chen called Bella with a voice that had shifted 3 degrees toward friendly. Thank you for your help, Ms. Morty, we may have additional questions. You always do, Bella said, and when she hung up, she put her head in her hands and shook with the kind of relief that leaves you weak. Dante stood in her doorway and didn't enter until she lifted her face. We're not out, he said, because he refused to lie to her even when truth cost him. They'll keep looking. They'll tug every thread. Then we keep sewing, she said, a tired smile bending into something like stubborn hope. I'll make the numbers hold. I'll make the people behave, he said. Not with blood. Not unless I'm out of other languages, he replied, and she accepted the compromise because she knew the world they lived in and the man she'd chosen to try with. Why did you come to the bureau? She asked suddenly, softer. Why did you stand in that hallway and take my hand? Because I didn't notice you for years, he said without flinching. And when I finally did, it turned me into something I don't want to recover. From. He crossed the room and stopped an inch from her, unlearned every bad habit he had at once, and asked with his eyes for what he wanted with his bones. She rose into him, not a kiss and not one. The kind of almost that leaves your mouth marked anyway. PG-13, holy, devastating. Dinner, he said against the air between them. With me, somewhere with cheap plates and good sauce. No drivers, no shadows. Tomorrow, she said, breath shaky. I have to see my mother tonight. Tell her I'm trying. Tell her I'm trying too, he said, and she laughed, small and real. They didn't get the dinner. The first sign was the text from Tommy, unmarked sedans circling. The second was the way the street went quieter than it should have on a weeknight. The third was the knock on the front door of Caruso's, polite, official, the sound of law with paperwork. Dante stepped into the dining room as 2 agents held up badges that gleamed like promises. We have a warrant. To search these premises, Agent Chen said, crisp as starched cuffs. Behind Dante, the staff froze. In the office hallway, Bella's heart hammered against bones stronger than she felt. Dante looked at her over the agent's shoulders, and in that look she saw 6 years of distance, 3 weeks of repair, a lifetime's worth of choices, and the thing jealousy had finally woken up. A man willing to set himself on fire if it kept her warm. He didn't. He did the opposite. He lifted his hands very slightly, the smallest open gesture a man like him could make, and said, "You'll get cooperation. You won't get chaos." The agents flooded in. Boxes came out. Files were lifted, scanned, logged. Dante stood like a statue and answered only what the warrant demanded. Bella stood in her doorframe and answered nothing at all, because her lawyer stood 2 steps in front of her and did that for her. When it was done, when the restaurant looked like a house after a storm, everything technically still. There, nothing where it belonged. Agent Chen paused by Bella. "Smart move, pulling the Castellano thread," she said. "It bought you time." "Not for sale," Bella said. "Everything is," Chen replied, not unkindly. "But some prices you don't want to pay." She left. The door closed. The restaurant exhaled something like a groan. Dante walked to Bella like slow gravity. He didn't touch her. He didn't have to. "We'll survive this," he said. And for the first time since all of it began, she believed him not because he was Dante Caruso, but because for 3 weeks he had proved he could be just Dante when she needed him to be. "I canceled dinner on you," she said, shaky smile failing and forming simultaneously. "We'll reschedule," he said, "preferably in a timeline where I'm not on a watch list." "Unrealistic goal," she murmured. "I've built an empire on those." She leaned into him then, a small surrender that felt like winning. He put his hand at the back of her head and held her the way you hold something you finally admit you can't afford to lose. Across the street, James flipped his sign to closed and watched through glass as 2 people who were not his story found their way back into the same scene. He shook his head, half smile, and turned off the lights. Inside Caruso's, Dante lowered his mouth to Bella's temple and let himself say the one quiet truth a man like him gets maybe once. "You're mine," he breathed, not a claim, not a cage. A vow carved out of restraint. "And I am yours. That's the only math that has ever worked." She nodded against him, eyes closed, a tear he did not deserve wetting his collar. "Earn it every day," she said, "and don't make me invisible again." "Never," he said, and for a man whose life was built on lies he told the world, it felt alarmingly good to tell one true thing and mean it. They didn't get a tidy ending. Not yet. The feds would circle until they were bored or called away by bloodier news. The nephew would keep his nose clean and his accounting cleaner. Mrs. Castellano would get fresh daisies. Maria would forget and remember in the same afternoon, and Dante would keep going every Sunday because some rituals make you human. Bella would drink her coffee black on Mondays and soft on Fridays, depending on who she needed to be. She would fix numbers and lives with the same serene precision. She would make him better by refusing to let him be worse. And Dante, who had not noticed the woman behind the glass for 6 long years, would spend every day like a man who had been given back his sight, jealous enough to protect, gentle enough to deserve, mad enough to admit it. When the next storm came, they would turn toward it shoulder to shoulder. When the jealousy rose, it would have new rules. When the bureau knocked, they would answer together. And somewhere between the promised dinner and the next search warrant, Brooklyn would bloom in ways neither of them had planned for. But that was tomorrow's math. Tonight, in the wrecked hush of his restaurant, the Mafia boss did the softest, dangerous thing he'd ever done. He stood very still and let a woman he had finally seen see him back.